Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of It's Not That Simple. Today's topic is going to be e-commerce, and we're thrilled to welcome another star-studded guest to the show, Colin Bryar. Colin, it's fantastic to have you. Former vice president at Amazon, of course, co-author of Working Backwards, that fascinating book that really looks into the culture of Amazon, the principles, the strategies, and the kind of path that you took alongside Jeff Bezos to make it the most powerful e-commerce platform on the planet. I'm really looking forward to having an opportunity to get your experience, your expertise, and helping us break down the topic of e-commerce, what we've seen over the last decades, where we are right now, and where it's going. So welcome to Portugal as well. It's fantastic to have you here. And the first question has to be, if you can roll back the years, so to speak, and take us to your first few years at Amazon, what was the vision and what were the steps that you took to allow to take this fantastic pathway to success?
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And my first day at Amazon, it was back in March of 1998. Amazon was actually a small company then. We had just done $147 million in revenue for the prior year. And there were about 100 people in the corporate area. I started out in the product development group, so you could fit the whole product development team in a relatively modest-sized conference room to say, what do we build next? Wow. But the first day I started, I met Jeff Bezos, and he said, he wanted to build Earth's most customer-centric company. And he held true to that word from that day I met him up through the time he left to become the chairman of the board at Amazon. And he was all about customer obsession. I will say it was not a done deal that Amazon was going to even be around in a couple of years, or the big success it is today. And so we had a lot of hard work in front of us, but we knew that we had to earn the trust of our customers every day, despite what the press, the pundits, competitors would say. So it really was just focusing on serving customers. They're the ones who place their trust in you. They're the ones who give you their money, so you need to focus on them every day. And they don't let you slip or let your guard down.
It's interesting you already used a few of the words that I really want to delve into during our conversation, words like trust. But when you talk about the working backwards philosophy and putting the customer at the center of everything you did, this was quite revolutionary at the time, especially to do it on the internet, where perhaps no one else was doing it that way, correct?
Yes, we were building products and customer obsessions, Amazon's first leadership principle, and we realized we weren't thinking about the customer enough, to be honest. And so we wanted to come up with a way, once we had an idea, to make sure that the customer was with us for the whole journey, taking that idea from that small stage to launching and becoming a very large business. And so Jeff created a different process called Working Backwards, which is start from the customer perspective and work backwards from that to develop. It sounds simple and sounds like, well, everyone does it, but a lot of companies build products with a skills forward approach. What are we good at? What market do we want to get into? And how can we nudge into an adjacent market? And that's, you don't mention the word customer enough. So that's why we developed it, to make sure that it delights customers from the very beginning through the end when the product launches.
We know that obviously people make companies, right? So how important was it as well to get the right people and then instill the right culture?
The first scalable, repeatable process was all about attracting the right people at Amazon. It started in 1999, so people are incredibly important. They will make or break the company, and we realized that we didn't have a formal process to attract people to the company who really agreed with and lived by the Amazon core values and leadership principles. And so that was we realized everyone hired their own way. Do you like the person, or you brought in whatever interviewing technology or process you had from your old company. And we didn't want that. We wanted to have people who came in who really lived and breathed the Amazon leadership principles and core values. And so we created, it's called the Amazon Bar Raiser process. And remarkably, it started in 1999. That process is still around today.
Yeah.
It's still around in the form, almost exactly the same form it was created in 1999. So it's been a competitive weapon for Amazon too, to consistently raise the bar with people who we pretty confident will become tomorrow's leaders at Amazon.
Of course, timing was important, but so many other companies started at a similar time to Amazon, and obviously they have not had the trajectory of spectacular success that Amazon enjoyed. What were some of the big differences, really, on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month product kind of differentiators that you had, and the services that you thought were better and were better suited as well to put the client first?
Yeah, it was really the way I think that we approached serving customers. So I talked about customer obsession, but also a spirit of invention. And if you want to be an inventive company, you also have to be prepared to fail. It's not an experiment if you know it's going to work beforehand, Jeff would always say. So you need to have a process to handle failures and learn from them and become better, because we made a lot of failures along the way. There was some luck too. But when we did have failures, we would study them, learn from them, and get better. So that spirit of invention and the relentless focus on the customer, and then just the discipline. Some of these processes are pretty easy to understand, but they're hard to do day in and day out. Diving deep into the data. It's amazing how much data you look at as an Amazon leader every day about the customer, and that just takes discipline to do each day, but it's ultimately what serves customers.
According to some data I saw from 2023, right now e-commerce represents around 19% of global retail sales from that year. Obviously that varies from country to country. Here in Portugal it's lower than that. I think in the United States, and from the time I spent there to obviously a lot of friends I have, culturally it's quite a different experience to shop, because people want it fast and they want it easy and they want it now, whereas shopping in other cultures, it's a lot more of a social experience as well. I wanted to ask you about what some of the challenges of e-commerce have been, where it's in the United States or other areas of the planet as well.
So the challenge is, what we tried to do was identify durable customer needs. Durable means they stay the same throughout time. Okay. And we knew that customers 10 years from now would never say, I like that Amazon, but I just wish that their prices were higher and that it took longer to get me the goods. Yeah. And so we knew if we injected energy into lowering the cost structure so we could lower prices, getting goods faster to customers, those are things customers care about, and ultimately what's going to change their behavior from one alternative to another. And there's e-commerce moves fast. There's lots of new technology, and you want to use that technology, whatever it happens to be, but you want to use it to lower prices, to get goods faster, to have selection. So we just focused on the things that would not change, and really knew that would ultimately win over the largest number of customers.
When it comes to keeping prices low, what were some of the secrets that you allow to do that? I guess scalability is related to that, right? But then how much of a risk is it to scale the volume of product if you're not going to be able to move them? So is that where some of the risk taking also came in? How would you describe the growth process that Amazon went through, and how aggressive it was in a way to grow the business and keep prices low?
So frugality is one of Amazon's leadership principles, and one simple example is the desks at Amazon are door desks. They're made out of doors. They're 4x4s set on a door set on top of that. It's to remind you when you come in every day that you have to be frugal. You can't have the high cost structure and be a low cost retailer. The other thing, though, that Jeff Bezos challenged us for is, could you be a high service and low cost retailer? And Jeff wanted both of those. He wanted the high service and low cost. So if you look at most of Amazon's big businesses today, they're self-service businesses. You can just sign up without talking to anyone at Amazon through AWS, through the marketplace, third-party marketplace sellers, fulfillment by Amazon. Those are very large, tens of billions of dollar businesses that really were built self-service. So that's just another example of how can we do things, innovate in a different way, even though everyone thinks you have to talk to someone at a company in order to build a large business. We said, is there a way to do that and serve the customers well and get them on board faster without us getting in their way?
It's interesting because when you talk about kind of putting all chips on the table and going for a strategy that is as successful as the Amazon one has been, did you ever think that you were moving too fast, or what were the conversations that you and Jeff were having, not in the late 90s, but let's say in the 2000s when you kept on growing, and what were you thinking? How big is this going to get? Are we going to continue to this path? What were some of the tough decisions that you were making?
Well, Amazon, when we started, it was really to get big fast. So you could be a profitable small e-commerce company, you could be a profitable large one, but if you're stuck in the middle, you have to build all of the cost structure, build all the infrastructure, personalization, delivery, and that you can't spread that out over enough orders. So we knew that we had to get big. But everyone thinks Amazon resources are free and easy to get. They were hard to get. You had to convince a lot of people to get new people or dollars approved for an initiative, and that constraint on getting capital, again, because we're a low-cost retailer, meant that we had constraints, but that constraint drove innovation. And so when we would plan every year, we would have growth target, but the cost structure had to be, we had 100% control over our costs. And so we did it in a way that we know as we got bigger, it would start to pay dividends and the business itself would generate more cash, which we would funnel back into the customer experience and growth. So no, we didn't know how big it could be, but the market that Amazon was in, it was so large you can consider it unconstrained. So we knew that there's still, even today, Amazon is not the largest retailer in the US. Walmart is. So that's how big the retail market is. And worldwide, Amazon share is even smaller than it is in the US. So going after big markets and relentless day after day, year after year, that's how you can build long-lasting businesses.
Perhaps we'll get into the comparison with Walmart or other big retailers in the States a little bit later, because obviously they have a strong physical element to their stores as well, whereas Amazon obviously has less of a percentage of physical stores than a Walmart does, of course, nationally in the States. But you mentioned frugality, and obviously that brings up the importance of being profitable, right? And it's always been a challenge to sustain that, especially then when you have constant delivery costs and you're not controlling where you're shipping the goods. Obviously, you constantly have to adjust for that. What's that equation like when you're bringing in, of course, as far as overhead costs at your depots, you're trying to keep them as low as possible, but there's only so much you can do about delivery. How are you trying to streamline and minimize costs when it comes to delivery and other costs that came into the equation?
It's again, the bigger you get with the logistics, the lower your cost structure is going to be. You can fill up the trucks, full. You can afford to build fulfillment centers closer to customers, which reduces the transportation cost while cutting down delivery time. So in the US, we like to say you can have your cake and eat it too. You can grow and then become even more profitable. So, projecting what does this business look like 10 years out, and are we willing to stick with that vision for 10 plus years? That's another thing Amazon does. I think they have a longer term time horizon, investment time horizon than most of their peers. So you plant seeds, but it takes 3 to 7 years for those seeds to become saplings and large oak trees. So you have to have patience and thinking long term. So those are a couple of things that really, the math has to work too, by the way. As it gets bigger, you have to do it in a way where you can become more profitable. But once you gain that conviction, that's not enough. You have to have the right time horizon to think about it.
Amazon has often been described as a data-driven company, and I think it's practically impossible to run any successful e-commerce platform nowadays, especially with all the technology at our disposal, without being data-driven. So when did that kind of philosophy or perspective start, and how important has it been to the success of the operation overall?
So it's always been there since the day I started in 1998.
Really?
Yes.
All the way back then?
Yeah, and we didn't have the formal systems to get that data either. So you had to figure out how to get it. If you were a software engineer, you could scrape the data yourself. But the tools eventually, became more proficient building tools to get the right set of data. But I would say one thing that's different about the data-driven focus of Amazon is if you were to flip through a weekly business review, for instance, it'd probably be 400 metrics, 50, 60 pages long, and 3/4 of the metrics there would measure somehow the customer experience. So we had a firm belief that if we served our customers right, the outputs like revenue, free cash flow, and profitability would come. But you can manage your inputs. So the data-driven focus on Amazon is a lot on customer-facing inputs. What did we promise our customers? When did we let them down? How long did it take for this good to get to a particular customer? When we missed our promise, why did we do that? So that's what most of the data is at Amazon, and that data is really the raw material that gives you insights on how do we innovate to solve real customer problems. So the data-driven wasn't about what do we want customers to do and how can we nudge them to one area or another. It was really studying customer behavior, internalizing it, and learning from it. So Amazon is quite unique on how it uses a lot of that data.
But how much attention did you pay to the profile of the customers and the importance of having their data and knowing what kind of customer they were? Breaking it down into different segments of audience and customer. How much work was done across that area?
Yeah, quite a lot of work. And what we first started playing around with personas and segments, but we realized with compute power, it's getting cheaper every year. You don't need those segments. You can look at the individual customer. So we had a vision about when you came to Amazon, the homepage would adapt to who you were, not what segment we thought you were, what persona.
When was this happening?
This was happening as late 90s, early 2000s.
Really?
Now, I'm not saying we perfected it then, but we really tried to say, why do you used personas before because gathering data was expensive, identifying who a particular customer, you weren't able to do that. But you are in e-commerce, so you can tailor the experience directly to who I am when I'm going to the site. How can Amazon help me, not a segment? So it evolved into that. And again, the raw material technology that you're working with, it follows Moore's law. So it's getting cheaper every year. And once again, thinking long term, you don't take that cost and put it to the bottom line. You say, these are things that we could do that have never been done before. So because compute power will allow us to compute the homepage for every individual.
That's fascinating that 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago, you're already personalizing, customizing the homepage experience. You've mentioned innovation a few times. What are some of the innovative kind of processes that you're most proud of?
So, a couple of them. One is Amazon innovated really to move in a completely different direction and a completely new business. So Amazon Web Services is one. Started out as a book retailer, online bookseller, and invented the cloud computing industry. And that was really, again, noticing technology trends that were happening, which web services and XML was a new format, and then looking at new ways of building software. And we had released with these self-services businesses, we had released a couple of experiments with XML, and we just saw an astounding amount of innovation that was created. And so Jeff in particular thought, how can we generalize this and basically give the same world-class compute infrastructure to a college student in their dorm room that an Amazon developer had.
Wow.
And it took several years to build. We didn't know whether we would be first to market. There was some luck there, but we got a 7-year head start in that. But that was one innovation I think I was particularly proud of for Amazon.
when you talk about e-commerce nowadays, and especially at the scale that an Amazon has, or other big e-commerce platforms around the world, the topic of the carbon footprint comes up. When did you start thinking about this as a company and having a responsibility to be as sustainable as possible?
So there are two Amazon, when it was an evolution. It wasn't one day the light went on, switched to say, okay, now we're thinking about it. We would always look at what's the carbon footprint of having a truck go and delivering 50 packages to 50 households versus having the 50 households drive or take whatever transportation to a mall, and look at that carbon footprint. So we knew that overall, it was a reduction in carbon footprint once you get the route density. But Amazon added two leadership principles when Andy Jassy took over as CEO, and one of them is about sustainability, and that Amazon occupies. It started in a garage, in Jeff Bezos's garage, but Amazon's no longer there. It occupies a much more important place in society, and Amazon employees need to act like that. So, Amazon doesn't add leadership principles that often. There are only 2 revisions since 2005. I'm excited to see some of the innovations that'll come out, directly from that leadership principle. But, it is important, and it's, becoming more important every day.
Did you feel pressure, or Jeff specifically feel pressure at a certain point in time to reduce waste as well when it comes to packaging and trying to make everything as efficient and, again, sustainable as possible?
Yeah, efficient, but it's also a better customer experience. You don't want excess packaging. You don't want to open a box inside a box, and then there's another box inside. And you also tied into innovation. There's one story I remember. We got feedback from this one woman who was an Amazon customer. She was an elderly lady and said, "Oh, I love getting my Amazon packages. I set them aside and I wait for my son to come over so he can open the packages because they're too hard for me to open." And so she was trying to give us a compliment, but we thought, why can't she open the packages? And it was to prevent theft and protect the packages. And so that was for us, and so we redesigned the packaging so it was both lighter and easier to open. So again, with these things, you can have your cake and eat it too if you try to innovate your way outside of the box.
You've said that a few times.
If you
I
ask
guess
Jeff,
that was a topic of conversation
if
internally.
If you ask Jeff an either or, should we do A or B, the answer often is, well, let's do both. So that's just we were hardwired to think that way. How can you have both high service and low cost? How can you get sustainability and also make it a better delivery experience?
Do you think that it is a preoccupation for the big e-commerce platforms in the world right now, or you think it depends in what region they are of the world as well?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the sustainability plan, so let me just I haven't really done a big study on that. But I do think that it's one, customers are demanding it, not just of an individual package, but they want to see what's a company's sustainability goals. How are they going to reduce their carbon footprint, get down to carbon neutral, and even carbon negative? So I think, thankfully, customers are actually demanding that of all companies, not just e-commerce companies.
Obviously, the kind of last mile delivery is a part of that, because not only is it important for the kind of bottom line of the delivery and the cost of the delivery, but also from a carbon footprint perspective. I mean, it's different. For example, you have a bunch of bikes delivering that last mile or last few miles, or if you have a drone, for example. Tell us what's happening in this technology landscape for deliveries right now as we speak, and what you think can happen over the next few years.
Yeah, so when Amazon first started, really we took advantage of the third-party delivery networks, and in the FedEx, UPS, DHL, the United States Post Office, Deutsche Post, and but now the technology is happening, and just even getting bike delivery, messengers and services, those are just becoming almost like SaaS services. So which is ripe for innovation. And so, drone delivery won't work in a lot of settings, but it will be the perfect delivery method for, some settings. So it's not a one size fits all, what is the best way to get a package from A to B. But again, you look at that as a problem. That is something that you can work on for years and years and perfect for different products, different locations, different modes of delivery. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. What you mentioned, a lot of those things are already happening, and they are just going to scale up, and I think improve the customer experience, improve sustainability too.
And when it comes to that kind of last mile delivery, I mentioned drones, but we've got self-driving vehicles. When you look into your crystal ball, and I know it depends on what setting it is, but you expect to see a lot more of this happening in the future?
Oh, definitely. And I would be afraid to pick which one, because again, I think it's not a winner take all thing. There are going to be different modes of delivery, but this is an area that is fertile ground for innovation in terms of, again, how do you get a good from point A to point B? And Amazon has been doing that not just from the last mile, but middle mile and first mile too. Amazon now has an airline fleet, for instance, a couple, I think 60 or more airplanes, and that's just a more efficient way to move goods within the Amazon network. So you're going to see innovation all over that supply chain.
When you talk about technological innovations, you have to talk about artificial intelligence, right? I mean, in any kind of business, it's a hot topic. How much is it present in e-commerce globally from your knowledge, and how important will it be moving forward in order to, I guess, cut costs in a way, and in another increase audience and consumer insights?
I think it's going to be incredibly important. The internet was one of the first waves of, it wasn't obviously a fad, going to web services and cloud computing. Mobile was another one. And I think AI is on par or even has more potential than those. And so in terms of, I'll give you one example. It was in the mid 2010s, so 2015-ish. Amazon saw this trend about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and this is pre-ChatGPT and LLMs.
Yeah.
And every group at Amazon in their annual planning had to answer the question, what do you know about machine language and artificial intelligence, and what are you doing about it in your organization? And the personalization team I talked about, had spent about 20 years perfecting algorithms to recommend products, which means lots of smart people looked at data and came up with algorithms. And machine learning flips it on it's the other end, where you just say, here's the behavior we want to see, here's all the data, go figure that out. And in a relatively short period of time, the 20 years of personalization work was replaced by machine learning and AI. And Amazon was pretty good, I would say world-class in that area, and even the AI disrupted that pretty quickly. I think that, again, you take some technology, and the question is, do we use it just to reduce the cost? But if that particular cost is a small part of your overall fixed cost infrastructure, you're only going to get a small gain from that. So I think the bigger gains are going to be, what types of problems can AI solve that were unsolvable up until today, and how can we use AI as a tool to go solve those problems? I think the incremental innovation value you get from that innovation will far outweigh the cost savings that you'll get, and there will be significant cost savings too.
So it's basically getting AI to help us solve some of the issues that could be present in the industry by thinking outside the box, and obviously bringing in as many factors as possible, as quickly as possible, that weren't there before. Is there anything that kind of scares you from the influence that AI can have, and especially when we're talking about e-commerce, because quality control obviously is very important. We have humans as the customer, and being customer-centric, you have to consider them to be humans. So what scares you? What are some of the threats that could be there?
Well, there's some safeguards that are being, the industry is thinking to put around AI in general. I think that thought process has to continue to evolve. It has to get there before the laws, government regulations and laws will be there, because those will take too long. So I'm hoping that there is some type of global consensus on how to manage some of these things. But in terms of how is AI going to be integrated into different people jobs, all along technology has actually made people's lives better in the vast majority of cases. You can go back 200 years in terms of the Industrial Revolution, and there are some jobs that AI may be able to do better, but I think that the overall benefit and you need to will be greater than the harm. But you do need to figure out for these jobs that are moving away, how do you retrain and repurpose people, because there's more work ahead of us to do, and how do you retrain the workforce to do some of these things that you need to do moving forward.
Kind of related to this and the relationship between customer and brand, or customer and service provider, is the whole human element. And how important for you is it or not, you think, for the big e-commerce platforms to still have a physical store? So we talked a little bit about Walmart before. Obviously, traditionally, and when I lived in the States, it was very, very common to go to a Walmart on a week-to-week basis, if not day-to-day basis, because it was the first time in my life that I saw a store open 24/7. And obviously e-commerce is 24/7, so physical store doesn't need to do that anymore. But how important is it to have a physical presence in people's lives these days, or not?
Well, I think if you look at the data, 80% of commerce is still offline. So
Offline.
Customers are saying even today it's very important, and I don't see e-commerce going anywhere close to 100%. Certainly not in my lifetime, but so it is very important, and there are different ways. There are a ton of different retailers. They have different approaches, thankfully, and that are very successful. And yeah, some people will want to go to a physical store, whether it's holding fruit and food and looking at it, or even flipping through books. There's physical stores aren't going away. I think combining them is, online and offline is, again, another area of innovation. We were surprised in the early days of Amazon that the brick and mortar companies didn't do more of that. Walmart is actually doing a pretty good job at integrating their stores into their e-commerce platform right now.
When you look at some of the platforms as a consumer that you may utilize, what are some of the pet peeves that you kind of see on a platform thing? I can't believe they're doing this. Like, what are some of the big mistakes that you see maybe some e-commerce platforms making these days?
I would say, well, I'll give you a little one. If I see a site that has an icon guide, I'm like, well, your icons aren't really working. You need to get your icons. So they're supposed to make it easier for people to understand. But in terms of some of the bigger, mistakes, if I go into a company, I will look at, well, can you show me your weekly business review? I want to look at what data they're looking at every day to make their decisions. And you need, in order to make high quality decisions, you need high quality, unbiased data, objectively coming in. So if companies are just looking at the outputs, revenue, customer satisfaction scores, and not what drives them, but just looking at the score, I wonder if whether they're going to be successful, continuing to be successful, because they're just looking at the lower quality of data to make those high quality decisions. So you can't make those consistently over time. That is one. How do you make? What's the time frame where you make decisions? And if it's this month or this quarter, often those things do drive short-term benefit, but they detract from the long-term customer value.
Okay.
And so I would see that as a sinking ship. Eventually it's a slow glide path, but that is not, it doesn't increase the overall size of the pie. So those are a couple of different areas where I look at.
I also wanted to tap into your experience working in the online groceries business. Of course, you were with Redmart in Singapore. What were some of the biggest differences that you kind of encountered right off the bat and saw challenges that maybe you hadn't considered when you were at Amazon?
Yeah, so a couple things. The inventory, especially in Singapore, fresh fruit and vegetables, it lasts. You can measure it in terms of hours or single-digit days, where a book can sit on the shelf for years and years and doesn't depreciate. Electronics depreciate fairly quickly, but it's on the order of a couple % a month. But a piece of lettuce, head of lettuce is going to be not worth anything in a couple of days. So that certainly was one thing. The other thing was, at Amazon, when we first started, we viewed delivery as an unconstrained resource. So you could just push as much of the orders you had, and you knew it would get delivered. With a scheduled delivery, you have to start from those delivery slots. So it's actually a different starting point. There's no point in taking demand if you can't get it to customers in time. And then the other one was you can use AI to help solve this problem, but you predict not is the inventory good now, but will it be good 3 days after it gets to the customer. So those are some different things that make groceries, online grocery delivery exciting but hard.
It's interesting because when I lived in the UK, and we're talking about over 10 years ago, it was quite common already to have people have their groceries delivered. In Portugal, I believe grocery commerce represents about 2% of the market, while non-food will be a little bit less than 10%. Do you see with also the increase in technology, maybe the availability of more products when it comes to grocery closer to people? Do you see an increase in this area of e-commerce, or do you think that at the end of the day, human beings still want to touch what they're going to eat?
I think you have to earn their trust, because actually with online grocery delivery, and so Ocado in the UK, they do a great job, and they're ahead of the game, they're ahead of where Amazon was with grocery delivery service. But it gets handled fewer times. That ripe peach that you see in the store, there are a lot of people who've picked it up and given it a squeeze. And if you can do it right in an online setting, it's less handling costs, less waste, cheaper overall. But you have to earn the trust. And so we found with groceries, people would order the heavy, bulky things first, and then, maybe I'll try eggs and see if they come and they're not cracked. And then, maybe I'll do one apple this time. And so it's a gradual journey. But for the people who did get there, it was more like a subscription business then, because you have to go with food. You have to go to the store a couple times a week, so you could have deliveries. But it takes a long time, and all it takes is some melted ice cream or a peach that's gone bad, where they're like, I'm done with that. So trust takes a long time to build, but you can lose it overnight.
There's no question about that. I think also when it comes to perishable goods, when it comes to deliveries as well, they also could be more affected by the weather conditions that there could be at a particular time. I mean, what was maybe the key takeaway that you brought from working in that industry? Maybe the key kind of knowledge point that you would be willing to share?
So what I brought from Amazon there was, when you map out the customer journey, it doesn't really matter whether it's online groceries or whatever business. You need to measure every single step. So from when it gets from the farm to the fulfillment center, onto a truck, into a delivery vehicle, to the customer's door, and then you get the feedback. For each of those stages, need to have concrete metrics that measure the speed, quality, and cost of every one of those. And so you're dealing with hundreds of metrics right there, but you don't know where the problem is going to be. And that's the discipline of Amazon is, okay, we're going to have to measure every step because it has to be perfect at each of these steps. And when it's not, we need to do some root cause analysis to figure out what went wrong and improve it. And those wins, they're tiny, but they're compounded over time. So when you say, well, it works now, what made it work? It's almost a nonsensical question. It was, quarter after quarter, month after month of getting better and looking at what matters to customers. So that's what I brought to Redmart, and that's what what we try to teach with looking at metrics and being data driven. What that really means.
As we start wrapping up our conversation, Colin, it'd be great to get a view from you now that you also left Amazon, been out for a while. Like when you look at different regions of the world, and if you look at culturally what the customer is looking at and the priorities that are there, what are some of the non-negotiables that need to exist in order for a global e-commerce platform to be successful?
One is that the culture inside the company has to be the same because you need to be able to make consistent decisions. So when Amazon moves into a new region, we would call it an away team. We copied the term from Star Trek. You would send people from at the corporate office, and they would live there for months until we knew that office would adopt the Amazon culture and live and breathe it. So you need that just to start. Those are table stakes. And you also have to look at, what is the same? And really question, like when Amazon moved into Japan, everyone was telling us, well, you have to do a joint venture because that's the way it's always done. And we couldn't find a reason why. And so when Amazon moved into Japan, it was it was Amazon Japan, which 100% owned by Amazon. Turns out that you can actually move into that region. But looking at the differences, they're usually legal, regulatory, transport, payments. Those are things that are quite different in regions. So you have to, your playbook has to be flexible. And then you look at what's not going to change. So low prices everyone likes. I don't think anyone wants to pay higher prices. Faster delivery and being able to find what you want. So those are things that were non-negotiable. So those are a couple of different things to look at, both from inside the company and then when you move into a new market. It's hard to get those right, by the way. Amazon moved into China. It was the playbook. We were too focused on the playbook and not really what the market landscape was. So that was not a very successful experiment. And then when Amazon moved into India, we said, okay, well, let's rip up the playbook because this market's very different too. And so you have to know when to be stubborn on the vision, but flexible with the details.
Because again, if the audience has a different behavior, you have to be adaptable and flexible to be able to adapt to that, right? Just because it was so successful in the United States, maybe in this landscape, it's completely different, maybe.
Yes, yeah. You can't have customers conform to what you want. It has to be the other way around. You conform to the customer needs, and that's the way to build a successful business.
Back to being customer obsessed. Colin, we're going to wrap up the chat with a few quick fire questions that we ask all our guests. So in one sentence, more or less, I'd like you to answer these questions. What is one personality trait that a good leader could really benefit from having?
Being humble and being a great listener.
Okay. What's the biggest challenge that humanity is facing at the moment, in your opinion?
Well, people are worried about what's going to happen to the Earth. With all the climate change, Earth's going to be fine. It's the people I'm worried about. So unless we, change some of our behaviors pretty soon, we're going to be the ones who are going to be in trouble. So that's the biggest one for me.
If you could change one thing in the world right now by magic, what would it be?
I would say making decisions with the right time horizon, because we're doing things that are going to impact our kids and our grandkids, and so we need to really keep that in mind. And so that would be the one thing, like how can we make this world a better place for future generations?
And have people with that mindset as they make decisions that can affect our future, right?
Yes.
Final one, what's the most important learning of your career and life?
Well, in my career, it really was, and Jeff Bezos told me this, it was, don't be proud of your gifts because they're given to you, and be proud of what you do with the gifts. And so that is one thing that I really took to heart, and that's why we wrote Working Backwards. We were in the right place at the right time, and just wanted to share some of these things that Amazon had created for people to study. So that's just one concrete example of living what I learned.
Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have an opportunity to talk about the successful ride you were on for so many years at Amazon, but not only that, really appreciate you sharing your insight into this topic of e-commerce, which is a daily part of our lives now, whether we like it or not, and will continue to grow in years to come. Understand what some of those key decisions were, and the word trust right at the center of everything that is done in order to be successful. So absolute pleasure, Colin, to talk to you. Continued success in your ventures, and I'm sure our audience was really valuing what you had to share. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It was an honor.
Really appreciate Colin stopping by and talking to us on It's Not That Simple. Hope you enjoyed his insights and his expertise. We'll be back shortly, I'm sure, with another big interview with a big expert on another relevant topic. See you soon.